Okay guys, part 2 of the unboxing videos for this week. I bet you can't guess what's in these boxes. So, short story to start. My car, as you've seen in previous videos, it is it's a 2014 ATS, has about 78,000 miles on it now. For the past 10,000 miles, maybe 15, have been running with a S257 SXE turbo over 400 wheel horsepower, still on the stock clutch. So about 2 years ago, stock clutch started slipping on the stock turbo on running about E40, E50, and a lot of torque. I was able to actually prolong the life of the clutch a little bit by putting the big turbo on, by bringing the torque in gradually, by moving that peak torque all the way, basically peak torque from 5,500 to 7,200 RPM. But with that said, it still can only do so much for it. So the clutch is slipping now in 3rd gear, and if you try anything in 4th gear, it's game over. So with that said, I picked up the Clutch Masters kit from ZZP. I've actually had it for a little while now, just haven't been able to find time to install with building other turbo kits and stuff like that, but now's the time. So let's open these up, see what's inside. And while we're on the topic of the big turbo setup and stock clutch, one of the things I did with that, by keeping torque not only gradual but down, when I made over 400 wheel horsepower, I'm only making 350, 340, 350 pound-feet of torque. And that does a lot of things. That keeps components like a clutch happy, but that also keeps a stock engine happy. Keeps any engine happy, really. But so for a stock engine, and we can get into lots of this at a later time, but for a stock engine, pretty much the whole thought that they pop at 300 horsepower, they pop stock, things like that. This has happened over and over again in different platforms, especially DI platforms. As they've come out and grown, the bottom line is you need to keep torque in check, you need to keep heat in check. So keeping torque in check often is a lot easier to do actually with a bigger turbo. The stock turbos, especially when you start pushing them, you're either going to be pushing torque higher and higher and higher, and that punch that a stock turbo has to create that torque hit is very hard on rods, the compressive forces. And then if you're trying to carry that boost out further, or you're trying to add timing up top to carry power out further on a small turbo, that's where your heat comes in. So the heat is what is detrimental to your piston ring. So you have the compressive forces with the torque hit that are detrimental to rods, that can snap rods in half and window the block. And then you have your heat that's created in an inefficient small turbo setup that you're trying to push. And that heat can cause the ring ends to butt and crack ring ends. So those are the two issues. Those are really what we should all be trying to combat when we build these. Lots of fairly easy ways to do that, and in the next coming weeks and months, hopefully we will have all of the fueling parts that are necessary to kind of complete that whole circle. Getting back to the clutch, let's open her up. Alright, some Clutch Master stickers. Looks like torque. Okay. torque guide for the flywheel, so I'm assuming it's the flywheel that's in this box. I have run Clutch Masters products before. I ran a 725 twin disc in my Mazda most recently with them. And everything I've run from them has been good. Looks like we have some bolts straight from them. Okay, package is shrink wrapped. Just nice, but kind of a pain. Obviously, if you guys didn't know, so the Clutch Master setup is going to a single mass flywheel. The stock dual mass flywheel is extremely heavy. It's for smoothness and driving, things of that nature. Quite honestly, I had never found a dual mass setup that I liked more than a single mass setup for lots of reasons, but most of which is I don't think the single mass setups are any more difficult to drive. I've heard some people say they get some chatter, things of that nature. Maybe, and maybe on this specific setup it's worse than others that I've seen, but quite honestly, the gains that you get on a single mass setup are just far outweigh any of the cons in my opinion. Alright, so here we go. So we got for the flywheel. First thoughts on it, it's actually thicker than I expected it to be. It's interesting. It is pretty light, but not as light as I expected, honestly. I think this one is 16 pounds ish. Somewhere around there, which is still half the weight. Even if it's 15 or 16 pounds, half the weight of the stock one. So that's taking off so much, rotating mass. It's crazy. So anyway, yeah, it looks like. Okay. Hey, looks good to me. So there's the flywheel. On to box number 2. I bet no one can guess what's in box number 2. Okay, again, Clutch Masters goodies. Again, we got the shrink wrap, but this one's a little easier. White pressure plate. I don't know about that. I feel like everything that's going to get dirty should be black, right? Alright. So, looking at it, first impressions, not impressed with the paint on it. I don't know why. I really don't know why they would go with this white paint that's not kind of in great shape everywhere. I mean, it just looks old. Anyway, on the side that matters. So, disc-wise, single disc, but it is. It's not a full face disc. They're basically 8 pucks. 2, 4, 6. Yeah, it's basically like an 8 puck sprung. That's nice. I've run a 6 puck unsprung. I've run a 6 puck sprung. I've run a lot of different. I've run the twin disc, obviously. A lot of different clutches. I've actually run a similar kind of face to this, where it's basically 8 pucks. I've run one of these. They've all worked out well for street driving. The twin disc was definitely the biggest pain for street driving, but even that was doable. So I'm excited to install this. It's been a long time coming that I haven't been able to fully utilize the setup that I have on the car, because I've been kind of tiptoeing around the clutch for a long time, trying to live right on the edge of where that clutch could hold. My friend Jonathan, in his Evo 9 turboed ATS, he runs this same clutch setup, has for a year now or so, and it's been great to him and has held a lot of power and considerably more than I've made torque wise, for sure. So yeah, I'm excited to get this in the car, turn it up. It will allow us to do a lot more tuning, testing, development. So big things to come this year, and as the weather breaks around here and as I get this clutch in, it's going to open up a lot of doors, and hopefully we'll be able to provide all kinds of new parts to you guys after being able to do that testing. So that is the clutch. I'm gonna actually do one more bonus box today because I forgot about it. So I have a new wideband that I ordered. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, GM in their infinite wisdom decided for the early model 13, 14, 15s too, I believe, Cadillac ATSs, they were going to be the smartest guys in the room and not put a wideband on the car from the factory. Now, there's not a single automotive person in the world who would have told you that was the right idea. Why they went that route is beyond me. Cost, I'm assuming, but it's always about money. So with that said, I encourage everyone else to, I got my own wideband for the car. I tune my cars. I was going to be tuning this car, and I could not imagine doing it without having a wideband. So I did purchase a wideband, and I went with an INNOVATE MTXL, I believe was the exact part number. So I went with an INNOVATE when I first bought a wideband. It's an MTXL, I believe is the exact part. And, you know, I'd run INNOVATE gauges, fuel pressure, oil pressure, and temperature. I'd run the gauges in the past. I love the way they looked. They work great for me. I had no problems. Now, fast forward to about 2 months after I installed the original INNOVATE O2 sensor, so the original INNOVATE wideband, and all of a sudden my readings are all over the place. My AFR is just jumping crazy, and that goes on for, I don't know, a week, and then all of a sudden the gauge just reads E8. It's an error message, and at that point it's not doing a whole lot for me, so I'm kind of screwed. So I look up what could be wrong, and come to find out that the INNOVATEs, all of a sudden, over the last 5 years or so, they have a major issue with burning out the O2 sensors that they are used with. So, you know, INNOVATE has seemingly fought this for years to say it's not an issue with their unit. You know, it's an issue with where people install the sensors. It's an issue with, you know, what weld bungs they're using. You know, everything under the sun. So what do? I tried to, you know, trust the company, and I moved my O2 sensor about 37 inches away from the turbo, which was plenty far from the heat. It was facing the exact perfect direction, almost exactly upright. Used their weld bung, which places it a little bit further outside the stream than normal. All these things, right? So then I get to about 2 months later, and what happens? AFR readings start going erratic. 2-3 days later, E8. So at this point, I'm like, I this is insane, right? So I drive the car around without it. I wasn't going to replace the sensor again. You know, all this stuff was going on. And at that point, my tune was pretty dialed, so I wasn't really concerned about it too much. I really wasn't making tweaks. I really had a good handle on what was happening with the car. So anyway, move forward again to a few months after that, and I had decided to start the big turbo project on my car. So at that time, I said, okay, I have to put another O2 sensor in the car because I need to be able to retune this. And now we're talking about full big turbo setup and auxiliary fueling on top of it. I need a wideband. So what do? Give them one last shot. I had to create a new downpipe again for the new turbo and everything. So I'm like, I'll just try this one last time. That worked through the summer, and sure enough, last week, air fuel starts jumping all over the place, and next thing I know it, 2 days ago, I got the E8. So instead of spending the $65 on a new sensor for the 4th time or 5th time, I decided I'm never doing this again, and I went and got the AEM X Series gauge that actually that Cooper's Camaro suggests. He linked this on the Facebook page a while back. It's actually where I found the link again to go buy it. The nice thing about this, so the INNOVATE and other gauges, you can use the analog input, and you can wire that to be able to use with HP tuners. It's not that difficult. It's not bad to do. But these gauges actually have an OBD pass-through where you don't even have to do any special wiring. Just plug it into your OBD2 port. Then you plug your your feed to the computer through the HP tuners software. You plug your HP tuners into that, and all goes well. HP tuners, reads that and everything. So this is the better way to go. It's the way I should have gone first, and I'll be installing this very soon on my car. So with the clutch, tuning can begin again, and with the new wideband, tuning can begin again. So with those two things, we're set up for. So with those two things, we're set up for some work to do and pushing the stock block. That's the point. That's the reason my car exists right now. So that's what we're gonna do. Right now, we're on about 24 psi. E30. I ran 93 octane through the winter, but now that it's 350 a gallon again, I was like, I might as well just switch back to my E40 mix because who cares if it makes a lot more power? I need to save some money. So that's what we're going to be doing. The weather, of course, is shockingly in the 60s this week in Northeast Ohio, which means for the next month it's going to be about 30 to 40 degrees and a rain sleet mix, and then like rain for a month after that. So that's the timeline I got for this. So anyway, open the box, you get a bunch of AEM swag, you get the OBD pass-through. So if you've never seen that, it's just essentially this connects, has a female that connects, and then it has a male out that allows any of your other OBD devices to connect through that. So that's really nice. Has a brand new sensor, which I've seen many of at this point. And the crazy thing is, and this is why everybody knows at this point, that the INNOVATE wideband is the problem, is because they both use the exact same sensor. So a lot of people have said it's most likely the heating element. I don't know exactly why, but the bottom line is the AEMs do not burn out these same sensors, and the INNOVATEs do. And I'm tired of it, so I just spent the money and got one of these. Okay, you got your gauge connectors. They even provide you with a O2 weld bung. A ton of these, but it's always nice to have more with the amount of downpipes that I do. And then last but not least, at least I think, okay, last but not least, we have our gauge. Honestly, it's the first time I've seen it. Much simpler looking than the INNOVATE gauge. It's cool. It's simple. Has a few selectors on the front. It's nice and thin. Good deal. So I will be installing this very soon, likely tomorrow, and then we can get to tuning with that. All right. So that's all I had for this unboxing. We have one more, and the next one is, I dare say, more exciting than the first two combined. So we'll get to that one tomorrow, next day, who knows. Cheers.